This recording is for Primary Math 6. We're working on the class recording for week 2. There's not actually any information that I need to cover as far as the math goes, just overall wanted to give you some information about this second week of Primary Math 6. We jumped right in to the topic of algebra in this week, and we haven't done a lot of practice on it before. There are some things that I don't think we've really covered in Primary Math 5 as much. When you do the integers, when you do positive, negative numbers, we haven't done so much about that, but there are some very intuitive ways to show it, and on the recordings that I have for intensive practice and challenging word problems, I talk about intuitive things. But for example, when you're working on a problem and you have a negative sign, minus, if you have -2 in a problem, a -2 means two negatives. And when you're trying to get rid of those or even them out, then a positive and a negative always cancel. We kind of know that intuitively. We've played with magnets, we've done things like that. So there's some intuitive things we know, but a lot of that information is on the solutions recordings under intensive practice and challenging word problems. So sometimes you just go to those for referring to when you need help. I would recommend these, especially this week and even last week, that you use those for help to understand how to explain something better, how to do the work better. The other thing I want to say about the algebra, number one is that there's help on the recordings. Number two is the fact that we're going to keep it very concrete. I really don't want you, there are some problems in the intensive practice that have something like 5x plus 2 equals 3x minus 5. I'd just change it to a plus 6 instead of a minus 5 so it'd work out. I really don't want you to work with your child simply about saying things like subtract 3x from both sides, subtract 2 from both sides. I don't really want it to look like this. And although in the recording I do show you a way you can show this side by side, but the recordings show you ways to keep it very concrete. And for example, 5x means this exactly. We have 5 x's and we have 2 positives, and then there are 3 x's and 6 positives. And the idea is that we are balanced. We can think about a weight scales that have it all balanced. And the idea is to just keep in mind, rather than necessarily the algorithm, the math of it all, not this exactly right now. What I want them to understand is that this is balanced. If I take off 3 from this side and I take off 3 from this side, we're still balanced. If I remove 2 of these and I remove 2 of these, we're still balanced. So now what I have, once I've gotten rid of those and kept my scales balanced, is the fact that 2 x's are the same thing as 4 numbers, 4 positives. And so if I take these and I say, well, this x is going to get 2 of them, and this x is going to get 2 of them, then I can see very logically that x is equal to 2. This, in my opinion, is the idea, the foundations of Singapore math, what we want to do to launch to the next level of understanding an equation much more so than the right side of the page. Do we eventually need to do the right side? Yes. Can they see that that is the same thing? Sure. We simply took away 3 x's from both sides, which got rid of everything here and left us with 2x on one side. Then we decided to get rid of 2 on both sides. That left with us nothing here and 4 there. Then we said, if 2 x's is 4, each x has to be 2. It's the same thing, but right now we're going to stay as concrete as possible. So then that's the second thing about algebra, stay as concrete as possible. The third thing I want to say about this algebra section is this. If your child looks at it and it is frustrating and it is overwhelming, consider skipping it and coming back to it at the end of the year and doing this section at the very end of the year or at the end of the semester. Come back and try it and see how it goes. Remember, we talked in the intro to this class about the fact that your child may leave this and go to pre-algebra. Your child may leave this and go to Algebra 1. If this is really confusing to them now, you might revisit it later. If it's really confusing to them later, you might need to go ahead and do a year of pre-algebra. Let them have that maturity. Let them have a chance to do some more practice and let their brain grow up, things like that. And then use some of this to kind of decide what to do with the next class that you take. But I think that the last thing about algebra is this. Sometimes in math, I want my students to what I call being spot on. I mean, they can look at it, they can solve it, they can do it, no problem. I'm not really looking for this algebra section to look like that for my kids, and personally I'm not looking for that necessarily for your kids. Sometimes I say, you know, on the harder ones, if they can comprehend the solution, if I show them a solution and they understand it, even if they couldn't create it out of the air, that's okay with me. And I would say that is true on more problems in this section than most other sections. Not necessarily every problem, but you're going to get to some where you're like, they may have trouble figuring out by themselves, but when you do it or when you show them the recording, they ought to be able to understand it, to comprehend it. And then once they've done that, then you get to the point of saying, you know, maybe they could repeat it again. Maybe they could put it aside and come back to it and do it on their own after they've seen the solution one time. This may feel very abstract to them, and that's okay. It is quite an interesting leap to put this in the curriculum here. And so I just would give you the heads up that if your child is having trouble, not to be too overly concerned about it. Just come up with a solution. Be a little bit willing to be creative about it and come up and figure out what to do with it, and just don't be too worried about all of that. And I'll say one other thing. Word problems. Singapore math word problems are difficult. They can be quite hard, and especially, I would say, the Challenging Word Problems book is quite hard. In the past 5 years, if you've done high school math, or Singapore Math Live, sorry, if you're doing Singapore Math Live and you've been working on Singapore Math Live, or also just doing Singapore Math curriculum, the Challenging Word Problems books are the Common Core edition for 1 through 5. For Primary Math 1 through Primary Math 5, they're the Common Core edition. In Primary Math 6, they are the US edition. So what happened was when Singapore Math started making the Common Core edition, they just transferred all the Challenging Word Problems into the Common Core edition, and they stopped selling the US edition of the Challenging Word Problems. The difference is you subtract one page at the end of each section. So that's the only difference. And also it added a hint on some problems. So if you look at your old Primary Math 1 through 5 Common Core Edition Challenging Word Problems book, you'll see a hint occasionally, and you won't see it, but there will be one less page from each section in the Challenging Word Problems. Now we're in the Primary 6 US edition, so the last few problems are gonna feel hard. Okay, that last page hasn't been there before. So they're excellent, they're wonderful, you have recordings to help you figure them out, but sometimes they're tough. So just so you know, this Challenging Word Problem book is a little bit different than what you've done. You've had excellent practice, you've done excellent word problems. I still think they're the best part about Singapore Math, but you, in the US edition, there are harder problems at the end of each section, so don't let that surprise you or make you wonder what in the world happened. You're just going to encounter a few more problems, and the last ones are often a little bit on the harder side. So those are the things I wanted to make you aware of for the second week as you attack all of these word problems. Everything assigned this week is done in a recording. The intensive practice is all recorded, and the challenging word problems are all there, and hopefully the recordings will help you to explain it to your child, or certainly at this age and level they could very likely sit down and listen to it themselves. But don't be too stressed about it, and don't put too much stock in it. If your child finds it to be really new and crazy, switch it up a little bit and go to different weeks and come back to that maybe in the first part of the second semester or at the end of the year, or just not now. If it's stressful to you or to your child, take a breath and rearrange it, make it work the way that works for you. All right, that's all for today. Thank you.